Morning, everybody. How we doing today? Ready for the holidays? Of course, we all are. Before we kick off our meeting, I would like to ask our interpreter to introduce themselves and go over the process and procedures.
Good morning. Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on the mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish logo in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome to the December 12th, 2024 Mobility Working Group meeting. I am Councilmember Jose Rodriguez from the City of National City. Before we begin, I would like to ask Ashley, who will be serving as our clerk today, to see if we have roll call or quorum, sorry.
Yes, we have quorum.
Thank you, Ashley. And before we begin with our agenda, I would like to review meeting process for both working group members as well as members of the public who wish to participate. Any working group members can simply raise their hand. Any individuals of the public that are in person, please fill out the speaker slip. And any individuals that will be joining over Zoom can do so by simply raising their hand up icon. Based on these factors for today's meeting, members of the public will be allowed to speak for 2 minutes. So opening up the agenda, item number 1, this is a non-agenda public comment. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
There are no comments.
Any working group member comments? Yes, Mr. Samak.
Chairman Rodriguez, members of the working group, I am pleased to announce my retirement. This is the last meeting I'm going to participate with you. I have a couple of comments to make, but before I want to mention that Solana Beach will be represented continuously and regularly by Dan Goldberg, who presided the meeting with me last week. Today he had a conflict, he couldn't attend, but Dan Goldberg will be a transition city engineer and public works director for City of Solana Beach, and until the final decision is made. I also want to thank my colleague in this group. Mentioned that I feel a little bit of a bittersweet feelings about this announcement. I am looking forward to my retirement, of course, but it will be a big void in my life as I have been doing this for many, many years. Chairman Rodriguez, you and I have something in common, or a couple of factors that bonds us together. I was the last chair of the old CTAC meeting group, and you are the first chairperson of the new mobility group. So I consider this a bond that will keep us basically engaged with this team, at least for future. And lastly, I want to wish everybody well, and specifically express my gratitude to SANDAG staff who really did a fantastic job of keeping this group together. This is not the only arrangement that I have with SANDAG throughout the years. We work with SANDAG on many other occasions. Every time we had a very pleasant relationship, pleasant experience, and productive outcome. So thank you for all, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Samak. We very much appreciate your tenacity, expertise, and willingness to make not only your city, but our region a better place. Thank you. I also have an announcement of my own. This is the last meeting I will be chairing. It's been an honor to be here at SANDAG and chairing the Mobility Working Group for the last 2 years. I think that we've done a lot of really good things and a lot of really good projects that our cities and our county are able to fully utilize, and I think our public genuinely appreciates. So it's been an honor for me to be your chair, and guess you'll have somebody else that will be here next month. I'm sure it'll be a wonderful person that you all will also get along with very well. That was a joke. All right. Any additional working group member comments? No? All right. So moving on to consent. Approval of meeting minutes. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
There are no public comments.
Any committee work member comments? I would like to entertain a motion to approve.
Chair, I'd like to move approval of the minute as my last action on this committee.
Thank you, Mr. Samak. Do I have a second?
Howie will second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Everybody in favor, please raise your hands. Anybody opposed? Any abstentions? We have one abstention. Thank you so much. Motion moves forward. So moving on to reports, item number 3. We will hear from SANDAG's Deputy Director of Regional Planning, Jennifer Williamson, to discuss the annual public transit report.
Thank you, everyone. It's good to see you again. And Chair, I want to thank you. It was a joy working with you for the first 18 months of our committee stint. So thank you. Appreciate all your efforts for us. So I am here today to talk to you a little bit about our annual public transit report. This is a report that is done annually, as the title says, and it was developed as a requirement as part of the Assembly Bill 805, and we've been doing it for about 4 years now. So there's 6 things that this public transit report has to do, and those are indicated in the legislation, and you'll see those in your agenda item. So I'm going to go through those. I don't have a PowerPoint. How unique is that for SANDAG? But I'll let you know what those 6 requirements are. And then I want to talk a little bit about what this report can be and then what it isn't today, and ask for your input on what maybe you guys would like to see this report include in the future. So the 6 items that we have to report on and the sources that we use are, the first is a list of all the regional public transit needs. We identify all of these in Appendix A of every regional plan that we do. So that's a comprehensive list of every public transit project that has been identified across the region. We submit that under that item, and we ask for input on, if they have any comments on that. The second item that is a part of this report is operator identified service needs. For this, we look at both MTS and NCTD and their publicly posted budgets and their implementation plans. We link those directly. So there are no new sources created for this plan or for this summary report. We use existing information that can be linked to this document. The third thing is project evaluation criteria. We spend a lot of time at SANDAG developing project evaluation criteria as part of our regional planning effort. So again, to utilize our existing resources, we link Appendix T of the regional plan, which is a comprehensive summary of all of the criteria we use to identify which projects move forward. The fourth thing this report has to do is identify additional work on public transit. And I have to tell you that when we first started doing this, this was a hard one to figure out what they were looking for. So what we've identified is we go through our SANDAG project budget and we identify all those revenues and expenditures that we use to fund things that support public transit. And for that, we're looking at things like ITS, which might not be a direct, public transit expenditure, but it does do things to benefit public transit through signal development, CONOPS, and other things throughout the region that will help public transit. We also look at things like our active transportation projects, which include elements of complete streets that also enhance people's ability to get to public transit. So those are included in that summary line item. The fifth thing is our recommended transit funding. And what we use for this is our Regional Transportation Improvement Program funding. That's SANDAG's 5-year funding program. And we kind of think of the RTIP, that's what we call it, the RTIP, as you know, what will be spent on public transit. Because once you're in the RTIP, your project is pretty good to go. So we do link the RTIP as the response to that. The last thing is funds specifically spent on public transit. So here we look to both our transit operators, MTS and NCTD, and we use their budgets because we know that this is how they spend. Every dollar they spend on their budgets are spent on the provision of public transit. So those are the 6 things that this report has to do. And I do want to let you know that this report gets sent off every year on December 31st to the state legislature. And, you know, we kind of check the box on that. So it doesn't get a lot of airtime, if you will. And we don't use it at SANDAG as a method to look at performance metrics. Most of that is done as part of the State of the Commute report or as part of our ongoing transnet auditing features. So that isn't something that we've included in this report because we felt like that's a duplication of other efforts that we've made at the agency. This document isn't public facing. We don't go out and talk about this very much. We basically check the box on this report and we submit what is required by the state legislature. So I'm just giving you the baseline for that. We did take this to our board of directors at not our last board meeting, but the board meeting before, because again, we have to get this in by December 31st. They asked us to come back to you guys because we didn't have time to come to you before we went to them and find out if there's something more you'd like to see as a part of this report, if there's, you know, a different format that could be done. The report is very functional today. It identifies what the requirement is and it puts the link to the answer of that requirement. There's not a lot of meat and potatoes beyond just that. We have tried to beef it up if the state legislature is interested by identifying projects that were of interest of the last year. So for instance, Midcoast has been operating for a few years. We talk about the ridership trends there. We opened the Pershing Bikeway. That was a big project that had a lot of benefits across multiple projects. We have some priority projects. We give them an update on the Blue Line trolley and what we're doing to improve that. So we do add some kind of examples of what is happening on public transit, but we don't do a deep dive because again, we feel like that is done in other documents at SANDAG. So I feel like I've kind of given you a lot of information, but really if you've looked at the item in your agenda packet today, you kind of get a flavor for what it is and what it isn't. And I'm here today to be all ears for what it could be next year. If you have any input on that, or if you feel like, you know, this does what it's supposed to do, and we'll let our other documents like the State of the Commute report do the metrics and the kind of how is everything working on the system. So with that, that's all I had on this, but I am looking for your input and would really value your input on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
There are no public comments.
Any working group member comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Chair. Nathan Schmidt, City of Carlsbad. We do have a few slides that we've provided for this item. And thank you for allowing us to present the slides. It's a unique item. We just have some data that I think was just that was easier to present graphically. So that's why we prefer to present slides today. So thank you again to staff for the presentation and the report and expanding on the explanation of the need for the report and really what it's meant to be. Our comments today are really intended to inform SANDAG on the desires that what we would like to see in the report. And keep in mind, this is coming from a Carlsbad perspective. So I think this kind of gives you a good idea of what we're seeing in terms of North County transit use as well. So first, what we would like to see in the report is just an enhanced transit reporting. So really, looking at ways to expand on the transit report to include deeper analysis of the performance metrics, the ridership trends, and fiscal implications. Transit data, it goes hand in hand with the program. So we'd really like to see kind of, along with the programmatic descriptions that you've provided, what are the resulting performance metrics that we're seeing? SANDAG, you have comprehensive data, you have amazing data that we would love to look in deeper in detail if you would allow us. And just given the time or the release of this report, just going into the into the regional plan process, this would be an excellent opportunity to further educate your cities on the performance of transit throughout the region, so then we can make informed decisions and provide you with direction for the regional planning process. We'd also like to see data provided for a longer term perspective. So looking to provide that data in a long-term time frame, such as 10 plus years. This aligns with the regional planning process. It's a long-term process. So we'd really like to see how the long-term data has played out throughout the region. Go to the next slide, please. So these next few slides, again, this is from a Carlsbad perspective, but I also think this is very reflective of the data that we're seeing in other North County cities. So for Carlsbad, we have an extensive transportation demand management program where we work closely with our employers in trying to meet their needs for their employers making their commute to work. As part of that, we do annual surveys where we reach out to all of our employers as part of the TDM program and get their data on how their employees are traveling to and from work. Our latest data available is from 2023. And as you can see here, predominantly we're seeing lots of people driving alone to work. The next greatest mode is working from home. So telecommuting has had a big impact on how people are getting to and from work. But what we are seeing is very low use in terms of transit. So that 0.03%, the 0.1%, that's the amount that's taking bus, train, transit to work. So what that's telling us is transit, it could be improved in Carlsbad and North County. Next slide, please. And this last slide here, this is just in terms of what we're able to attain in terms of our regional connection on the coaster. We've seen, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, ridership flatlined at that point. We're starting to see a recovery as well, but we're still not at those pre-COVID levels. And I want to just point out, even with that increase in coaster frequency from 22 to 30 trains per weekday, we still aren't seeing the results of that being reflected in the ridership. So again, this is just a North County perspective. This is what we're seeing. So I think it would help if we get this level of detail in these reports so we can understand how ridership is working and how it's being played out with these programmatic elements that are in play. Next slide, please. So as part of the report, we would also like to see, kind of how SANDAG intends to really rethink regional transit. A big player here is disruptive technologies such as smartphones, remote work, autonomous vehicles, the advent of AI. These are things that are fundamentally, and they will be permanently altering travel behavior patterns throughout the region. And I think kind of getting back to that last slide, that's why we're not seeing transit recovery getting back to pre-COVID levels again. So we'd like to see how SANDAG is going to be addressing this. And really, I think SANDAG can use this as an opportunity to really kind of retool and rethink transit throughout the region. So looking at ways to harness this technology for transit innovation and make it more efficient use of funds, reducing cost, how can SANDAG utilize these new technologies that are here to stay, and potentially looking at either retooling that traditional fixed route service, which is not effectively serving our residents at this time. And just to conclude with the last slide, Just a few recommendations that we have. Again, you've heard this time and time again from us, is really to prioritize flexible fleet initiatives. We support ongoing flexible fleet pilots that you have in play, but we really advocate for more long-term regional funding and region-wide implementation to optimize this service delivery. In Carlsbad, we had a pilot of our own with the Carlsbad Connector, and we saw that as a great success. We're still hearing from our employers today in Carlsbad asking, when can we get this type of service back again? This would allow our employers to commute to and from work. It would give them, a travel time that's competitive to taking their vehicles. And then just in terms of navigating the fiscal cliff and accelerating implementation of these projects, again, to address these fiscal challenges, we really hope you can consider reevaluating or replacing some underperforming fixed route services with new technologies such as flexible fleets or other innovative mobility solutions, which I know you're well aware of. And then to really just prioritize cost-effective and timely implementation over these large-scale fixed route expansions that are being proposed. And really, ultimately, just to encourage transit agencies to embrace these innovative strategies and improve the financial sustainability to really enhance what we're offering to our residents. So again, thank you for that. And I do appreciate the report today. So.
Chair, if I may respond. Thank you, Nate. Appreciate your input and taking the time to put that PowerPoint slide together. The data that you are requesting and the information that you're requesting does exist in other reports that SANDAG produces. So I think this group is well aware that we do the State of the Commute, which not only looks at transit performance and transit ridership and mode share across the region, but it also looks at the performance of the entire transportation system. So that is an annual report that we produce. We share with this group, all of the groups. It's more public-facing document. We can certainly link the AB 805 report to the State of the Commute report where that data lives. The other thing is that I think you've all gotten updates on the transit ridership dashboard that SANDAG is developing and we're about ready to launch. So you will have real-time, almost real-time information on transit ridership by route for all forms of transit and on an ongoing basis on our open data portal. And then I'd like to just direct people to our open data portal because a lot of data is available there, including flexible fleet performance that is collected and shared out on an ongoing basis. In terms of the look ahead, that's what the regional plan is. So that's where we talk about the future of transportation, ITS solutions, technology solutions, flexible fleets, and connected vehicles, autonomous vehicles. That is really the report or the plan that has that kind of forward-looking focus. So I just want to be clear that a lot of what you're looking for, Nate, exists. It exists in other documents. We can certainly link to and reference those documents rather than recreating the wheel.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Yes.
Hi, Katie Persons, NCTD. Just one other resource I want to mention. NCTD provided a ridership deep dive on all of our services at our October board meeting. We covered ridership details of all of our modes as well as our individual Breeze bus routes. So I'm happy to share that supporting information with this group here. I think it tells a really interesting story of some of the trends that we've seen over the last 2 years. A key highlight of that deep dive is the significant increase in the school-based ridership that we see throughout our system and particularly on our Breeze services. And we also provide an interim update on NCTD's flexible fleets deployment in San Marcos. So happy to share that with everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Yes.
So our intent next year for this report is to come to you early in October before it's due in December. Let you know, and we can link some of those additional supporting materials that Nate has recommended that be a part of this report and get your input so that we can massage some of the reporting requirements. But again, remember that this is not a public-facing document. This isn't something we put on our website. It's a submittal to the state legislature. So we really do believe that a lot of what people would want to see is readily available. So we will include that and links to those documents in this and bring it to you. Hopefully the goal would be October, possibly November, but we'll shoot for October next year.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson. I would like to state that thank you so much for your work in putting this together on a yearly basis and all the other reports that are very helpful to make our cities more transit-oriented places. A national city in particular, we're the densest city in the county, and we have a lot of individuals that utilize transit ridership. We do have the highest transit ridership in the region, and that's a good thing, and we take pride in that. We also need to aspire to Vision Zero. Over this past couple of months, we've had 2 fatalities, a few others that have been seriously injured walking around National City. And so I think having that in mind for some of these reports and helping the individual cities to make sure that we have safer implementation of infrastructure to make sure that we encourage more transit ridership in the future, more bike paths, safer bike paths, protected bike paths is certainly critical for myself and our city. Thank you. All right, so this was a discussion item only. Moving on to item number 4. We will hear from SANDAG's Deputy Director of Regional Planning, Jacqueline Sisk. Yes?
They're just
Regional planners, sorry. Jacqueline Sisk and Sam Sanford. They will be discussing the Vision Zero Action Plan and Performance Measure 1 safety targets.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back again. I think it's been just over a month since we were here before this body presenting the draft Vision Zero Action Plan. And so we're excited to be back with this update that has a little bit more content. Some of it might look familiar, but it's good to revisit some of the safety items as well. So my name is Sam Sanford, Regional Planner with SANDAG, and I'm joined today with Jacqueline Sisk, also a Regional Planner. And today's presentation really has 3 parts. So Jacqueline's going to present materials and resources that are available to jurisdictions today that are products of the Regional Vision Zero Action Plan that can help inform development of safety projects. And then also she'll present the contents of the final Vision Zero Action Plan. From there, the third part, I'll step in and talk about safety target setting, which is a federal requirement we do every year. And that's the element that's part discussion as well, and I'd like to get some feedback from this body about direction on those targets. One of the key considerations is essentially taking state targets that they set annually through Caltrans or developing regional targets along with some other questions. There's a little foreshadowing of what the item is. Before I turn it over to Jacqueline, I just want to provide a little bit of background on this item. Just a reminder that this Vision Zero Action Plan, the safety efforts that SANDAG's been undertaking for the past year and a half, came from a performance audit recommendation. That recommendation then evolved into a board resolution directing staff and resources to develop a regional safety plan. That came to be a Vision Zero Action Plan that was funded through U.S. Department of Transportation, Safe Streets and Roads for All grant funding. A key element of this regional plan is that now that it is complete, it makes all agencies, owning agencies, eligible for implementation funds for future rounds of Safe Streets and Roads for All grants. And that is, it's $1 billion a year. It is competitive across the nation, but it is a funding source that now owning agencies are eligible to apply for. Before this plan, only agencies that already had a comprehensive safety action plan could apply. So that was a big step on this one. This project really kicked off back in September 2023. We've come to this group a few times to get feedback on the development of the plan. We also set up a technical advisory group that was multidisciplinary, that had advocates, owning agencies, transit agencies, school districts, and others to advise the development of the plan. And then as one of the recommendations through that process was a local agency product development team that met also, and I see several members here today that we've been meeting with to get input on the plan development and implementation steps throughout that process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jacqueline.
Thank you, Sam.
On the next few slides, I'm going to discuss some highlight products that we developed over this planning process, and we've brought several of these products to discuss with the Mobility Working Group. As you may remember, SANDAG created a centralized safety data dashboard, which you do see on the screen. So SANDAG took publicly accessible data from statewide integrated traffic record system, and improved the location accuracy of them and put them into an interactive dashboard so that local agency staff have one resource to go to so they can see the information. With the support of our consultant team, we developed two key safety products, the first one being shown on the screen, which is our safety focused network. The safety focused network shown is a key element of the network, and it shows the concentration of crashes. It identifies 54% of fatal and serious injury crashes occur on just 6% of the region's roadway network. This is exclusive of access-controlled freeways, but it includes all local roads and rural highways. In addition to that, the U.S. Department of Transportation Equitable Communities tool shows that 19% of our region is considered a social equity area, and 44% of the safety-focused network is in that same 19%. The second network is the Systemic Safety Network. The Systemic Safety Network is a proactive risk-based approach. It is recommended by the Federal Highway Administration. It identifies locations that have not experienced high severity crash concentrations, but they're recommended areas for safety improvements. Over the past year, our project team has worked with our community partners and conducted extensive outreach and public engagement in partnership with our community-based organizations, as well as collaboration with local agencies such as yourselves, who has joined us for the project development team meetings, technical advisory group meetings, and in addition to digital engagement and nearly over 30 presentations. We raised awareness of Vision Zero and allowed the public to provide input to help shape our solutions. All the feedback that was provided and received has been brought into the planning process and the development of this plan. The Regional Vision Zero Action Plan is linked in your staff report in the agenda packet. Every statistic in this plan represents a human life. Between 2018 and 2022, 4,433 people have either died or suffered life-changing challenging injuries on our roads in the San Diego region. This is why Vision Zero exists and why SANDAG developed the Vision Zero Action Plan. The goal of Vision Zero is to eliminate traffic fatalities by designing systems to reduce severity of human error. Mistakes we know are inevitable, but fatalities don't have to be. By prioritizing safety in our region, Vision Zero not only expands mobility options, but it also enhances health and quality of life. Cities that are committed to Vision Zero have shown that progress is possible. On the screen, you'll see the Vision Zero Action Plan highlights. So there is an overview from chapters 1 through 4, and there's also appendices that are attached to provide more technical detail. So a key word in this action plan is the word action. And we want to reiterate that progress is progress, and the actions laid out in the plan are based on proven strategies for reducing serious injuries. We are going to expand on the next steps that SANDAG will take to reach Vision Zero goals. So the goal is to institutionalize change in all that we do. So on the screen there, you'll see that we worked into weaving safety into typical SANDAG processes and roles, and we created the structure that you see on the slide with 7 implementation actions. On this slide, we will dive a little deeper into 3 specific examples of implementation actions. The first being funding, the active transportation plan. SANDAG manages 2 grant programs, the Active Transportation Program and the Smart Growth Incentive Program. The criteria for these have been updated recently to better align with Vision Zero action plan and provide incentives for projects that are in close proximity to the safety networks. Points are awarded for improvements to safety. The next one on the screen, we want to work with local jurisdictions in supporting new legislation, which is Assembly Bill 43. We have met with local jurisdictions, and a lot of you have joined our project development team meetings to discuss how we can support you in implementation of AB 43. And lastly, implement. We have also reviewed with local agency staff our tool, which is the Vision Zero Resource Hub. This is an online resource that is a project development tool for local agencies that has data, the networks, as well as digital outreach that has been brought into one platform that they can use as a resource. So the next steps for Vision Zero, as mentioned in the previous slide, the first being top of the list, AB 43 implementation. We have reached out to local agencies to see if they would like to opt in or out of AB 43 analysis. And the next on the screen is 2025 regional plan, similar to the 21 regional plan, which has a policy element within Vision Zero. The 25 plan will have a similar policy element with insights from the plan's development. And we would like to support local agencies on the technical side with supporting them in the Safe Streets and Roads for All funding. And then lastly, performance measure 1 target setting. I will pass that over to Sam so he can get into detail with performance measures.
So switching gears a little bit, now we're going to talk more about target setting. And for many of you, this will look familiar. SANDAG has been required to set annual safety targets since 2018. So it's been a few years. And there's 2 options for agencies like SANDAG. We have the option of either supporting statewide targets that are developed by Caltrans or developing and supporting regional targets. Thus far, since 2018, SANDAG has always elected to support the statewide targets. And so that's one of the questions that I'll get to in the discussion section later on, is to get the mobility working group's insights about preferences of which way to go on setting targets for calendar year 2025. Now, what the state has set for their targets is they are looking for a 2.8% reduction in fatalities and a 3.7% reduction in serious injuries in calendar year 2025. The second bullet on there is a little bit of a new process of a 3-year targets for decision making. And this is becoming a best practice. It's something that Caltrans has implemented this year as well with their 2025 targets. What it comes to is when we're establishing targets for just 1 year, those have to be established early on in order to inform decision-making. And the way the federal rule-making process is right now, it doesn't really inform that. So essentially, MPOs like SANDAG have to set their targets by February for that same calendar year. So we'll set our 25 targets in February 2025. For decision-making purposes, such as informing a budget, informing a capital improvement program, informing our transportation improvement program, those decisions have already been made by that time frame. So that target doesn't get to inform decisions for that particular year. So Caltrans has taken that approach along with alignment with other target setting processes, and they're setting a target 3 years out and then calculating backwards into what's required by Federal Highway Administration for that 1-year target. And I'll illustrate this in just a minute on the subsequent slide. But that is a process that whether we do a statewide target or a regional, we do something similar with that 3-year approach. The 5 targets that are required are also listed on the slide. Those have remained unchanged since the initial process. The exact methodology of how we monitor those are set in federal rule, but the target establishment itself is really up to the MPOs, the region, to develop. So this slide really goes over the target setting methodology, what it looks like in general. We look at trends, past statistics for what's occurring on our roadways. We think about influencing factors, things that might be changing over time. And then there's always some challenges with safety data, that there are missing years. And then we have using all that information to come up with an expected future. So just for the point of illustration, I'm going to bring up an example. This happens to be San Diego regional fatalities. This could be statewide data. They all look very similar. Year over year, there's quite a bit of variation in fatalities, but in general, unfortunately, we have an upward trend in fatalities. To get rid of that variation from year over year, we apply a trend line or 5-year rolling average, and this is going up from left to right, indicating it's growing over the years, unfortunately. One of the challenges is I did mention the 3-year target. That would put us out to 2027, and then back calculate to the other oval there of 2025. But you'll notice that there's a big gap. We don't have data for 2023 or 2024, but we need to establish targets for 25. So it does create some methodological challenges on how to do this. One of those is bringing in those influencing factors and other aspects. But that's the process overview at a very high level. So essentially, with the information, we create kind of a cone or an area where we anticipate we'd want to have a target, and then have discussions about where that target would be. That's how it was performed for Caltrans as well, as they look through different methodologies. I had mentioned influencing factors, so I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about what I mean by those. So these are changes where we expect to have some impact on the number or the severity of crashes. So it can be things like completed projects. We make an improvement on a roadway, which are obviously going to have an immediate effect on those that travel that roadway. But we also want to look at larger scale influences, like changes to regulations, to laws that would impact the entire traveling public. So we did list up on this slide several new state laws that are also in effect now that can have a positive impact, decreasing severity and the number of crashes. So on the area of speed management, Jacqueline spoke to Assembly Bill 43 about providing more flexibility to local agencies to reduce speed limits on the roads they control. Another Assembly Bill 413 is about intersection visibility, essentially prohibiting parking close to crossing. So there's greater visibility for the active transportation, walkers, bikers, but also for drivers to see other roadway users as they approach an intersection. Complete streets element is being enhanced in SB 980 and Caltrans incorporation of complete streets in their SHOP projects. Those are just a few examples. And as the legislature continues to evolve and make new rules, we'll continue to update this. But those are some supporting influences that we're considering as we think through what could be happening in 2025 and beyond as far as the number and severity of crashes. Other influences we've discussed, but we did not come up with a clear indication of whether it would be a positive influence or negative influence, would be demographics, growth or changes in the size of the population, but also the age, how many people are of driving age, mode share, use of different, whether it's driving alone or transit, active transportation. Another key one, vehicle fleet. There's been news lately about vehicle fleet and the growth and size of vehicles, the weight, the front of vehicles, and that front of vehicles has a negative impact when there's a crash with a pedestrian and higher severity on those. And then also the economy, which also drives a lot of the roadway usage. So those are some of the influencing factors. The subsequent slides I'm going to go through just really look at our region and what the performance has been over the past several years with the most recent data available. So if we look, they're all set up very similar with the observed data in columns and the 5-year rolling average in the line going across. So this is the fatalities for the San Diego region from 2013 to 2022. If we look at the fatalities by vehicle miles traveled, so essentially we're normalizing the data by the amount of driving that is occurring on our roadways. It's more flat, but has a uptick in more recent years. For serious injuries, slight growth over the past several years. Again, that rolling average is going up left to right. And then serious injury VMT is showing a similar characteristic. And then the fifth and final measure is vulnerable users. So this looks at cyclists and pedestrians and both severe injury, or I should say serious injury and fatality. So it's kind of a combo measure for all active transportation users. And this again has a similar trend than that the other four measures have shown. So I mentioned earlier that we wanted to get some feedback from the mobility working group. And one of the questions I'd appreciate getting some insights on would be the preference of the mobility working group members on either continuing to support statewide targets or developing regional targets and supporting those targets for calendar year 2024. That's the first piece. The second would be, are there other influencing factors that we should be considering or looking at? So I'll pause there and appreciate if there's any comments or thoughts on those that you'd like to share.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
There are no comments.
Any working group member comments, questions?
Chair,
Yes, Mr.
I have
Sabat.
a quick question for Sam, and then I'd like to make a comment. Sam, can you tell us why there is a gap for 2023-24?
So the data that we're required to use for the performance measures essentially comes from either the NHTSA's FARS, Fatal Analysis Reporting System, or SWITR's. And for all those crashes, essentially when an officer responds on scene and they fill out the report, that is eventually sent to CHP. CHP has to put into a system. And there's a lot of data validation that occurs. And that's that delay. So it's about 18 months to 2-year delay from when an officer arrives on scene, fills out the report, that gets vetted, then it gets sent to CHP. CHP checks it again, enters it into their system. So it's just a long process. There's a lot of work to shorten that, but that's a longer term effort.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the information. And my comments are, first of all, I want to say thank you for this report. This report was excellent. I know our city was actively involved with your subcommittee group. Our city will endorse and ultimately adopt the regional plan as far as this particular Vision 0 is concerned. We're going to endorse that, and we're not going to have our own, maybe supplement that with our own internal information and targets. But for the most part, this is a fantastic effort. So kudos to you and your team. My comment is primarily around the concept of the majority of our fatalities. 54% of them occurs on, I think, 6% of our roadway network, which is really a very challenging edge to focus on. It is good and it's bad. It's good for those of us who do not have that 4%, and I'm happy that we're not in there. But at the same time, while I think we should focus on that 6%, we need to, because it is important. We have to definitely make sure those agencies who have jurisdictions over those 6% not only are provided with the right resources, but also be supported by the rest of us, because we all drive those 6%. It's not just that agency that actually owns it. But at the same time, some of us have other information that is chronic. They're chronic problem roadway segments, networks, intersections. Fortunately, we haven't had fatalities, which is why that information never found into the state information database, and they're not included. But there are issues that we would like to address. So we need to keep that in the back of our mind. But at the same time, I also want to say that we support the fact that those specific 6% should really get higher resources. So when it comes to grants, both of those grants applications that you suggested, they should be given higher priority. And I'm glad that you guys are providing specific factors for the evaluation process. But at the same time, there should be another way of addressing those chronic issues. And I really don't know how to address that. I think I leave that to experts like yourselves and some other agencies with more traffic engineering background to be able to create a formula or formulate the need for the chronic problems issues. And I think if that is included in the overall goal and a target for the region, it would benefit everyone. That's just my comment. And thank you for the report. It was very well done.
Thank you. Mr. Minisili from IB.
And good morning. Thank you. Obviously, this data that's being shared here about the actual number of injuries and fatalities increasing, the very concerning fact of the normalized over the miles traveled, seeing that rate go up is highly concerning. I guess as far as target setting goes, I suspect we don't have any overlay of this, but I imagine our targets are continually being lowered every year. At least the Caltrans targets are showing a decrease, or the hope is that we'd be seeing a decrease. And I guess what's going to likely happening if we overlaid this information, the targets and the actual reality they're growing apart. Is that accurate?
And so the FHWA does a review of Caltrans targets and their performance to targets every year. And I think they've reviewed 2018 through 2021, and they found that Caltrans has not made significant progress on their targets for those years. So they have not made it on usually 4 out of the 5. So there is a distance between observed and where the targets are. That being said, as far as the implication of setting targets, meeting targets, that goes fully to Caltrans. There's no implication to SANDAG on this. Caltrans has to develop an additional planning document, essentially their Highway Safety Improvement Program implementation plan that they do every year now as a result of not making significant progress on their targets.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
Hi, Nathan Schmidt, City of Carlsbad. Thank you for the presentation, and I really commend SANDAG, in particular on the outreach process that was implemented as part of the Vision Zero. I think it's a model to follow for other initiatives. Appreciate the direct working relationship that we had with staff on this. Just a few, I guess, kind of questions. I know you had a slide on the federal performance safety targets. If you could maybe expand on, what is the basis for that? Is that just targets that are established by the SS4A grant program? Just trying to understand what are the implications of those targets?
Yeah, good question. Essentially, this item kind of brings together 2 different processes. Prior, we've been working to complete the federal requirements of setting targets for those 5 measures. And that started back in the first year we had to set them was 2018. But the process for developing those measures dates back to about 2015. The Federal Highway Administration developed the methodology that we had to follow for that. Now that we have a Vision Zero action plan, we wanted to bring and merge these 2 efforts together, similar to what Jacqueline was talking about, where we're integrating safety in everything that we do and integrating Vision Zero in all the safety aspects that we work on. So that was really the blend of these 2 items. This item has come to this group in prior years and just been target setting, and that's been the sole focus of it. But now that we have Vision Zero action plan complete, we want to bring the 2 together. If that helps clarify the relationship between them.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And then just some suggestions on how we can use this moving forward. I think, the dashboard that you've set up is very useful. And I see that as a potential kind of working dashboard that cities can utilize to understand how some of these infrastructure projects are actually either benefiting or, how they're impacting actual safety. Because there's, a lot of untested, measures out there that frankly our public has questions on, for example, class 4 protected bike lanes. We get lots of questions about, how those will function in our cities, because in the news, we see reports of crashes, people hitting those. I think if we can have this regional database kind of come together and collect safety data that we can then bring forward as we're trying to implement these types of projects, that would be very helpful, just as other case studies, that we can point to, because a lot of the data that is currently available is from other areas, from other regions, maybe it's more urban areas that have roads that function very differently than our roads function. So using that as a tool to kind of build upon this great safety database that we have would be very helpful for us. So appreciate the effort, and congratulations on the Vision Zero for the region.
Any additional comments or questions? No. Thank you so much for a very good presentation and very good informational item. This was only a informational item, I believe, discussion item. So moving on to item number 5, we'll hear from SANDAG's Associate Regional Planners, Zach Hernandez and Lizzie Harvey, to present an overview of the work completed to date on the San Isidro Mobility Hub and Blue Line Transit-oriented development sites.
Good morning and thank you. Good morning to the Mobility Working Group. Thanks for having us. Again, Zach Hernandez, Regional Planner here with my colleague Lizzie Harvey. We're here to present a couple updates on multiple efforts that all kind of across them have the shared goal of improving how we serve our South Bay, our border, and our cross-border communities better, not just with mobility and transportation, but also with broader strategies, more comprehensive strategies about how we maximize the use of that transit with land use improvements. But just to start, with the work that we're doing to prepare for mobility changes, transportation improvements at the San Isidro station, and just to set a little bit of context, paint a picture. Today, on any given day, we have over 90,000 people, closer to 100,000 people on a busier day, crossing just northbound through the San Isidro port of entry, just through that port of entry alone. And we have 3 others in the county of San Diego. And to put that number into perspective, I don't know how many of you were able to attend a Padre game this last season. They broke a bunch of attendance records. That stadium only holds a little bit less than 45,000 people. So envision, 2 sold-out events happening every single day, and that volume of people, moving in and out of that stadium. That's what we're seeing at just the San Isidro Port of Entry alone. 20,000 of those 90 some odd thousand are crossing on foot as pedestrians, and 14,000 of them are using transit, primarily the Blue Line trolley. And since 1981, when the Blue Line first started operating, San Isidro has been the anchor for the regional transit system, and it still is. But the thing is, you wouldn't guess that by being there at the station, seeing the condition that it's in or the way it's laid out. Today, it continues to be a major workhorse, as we know through the data, but it's doing so despite many, many limiting factors. So that's just a little bit of context setting. But in terms of what it's like out there today, the words I keep coming back to are hectic. Chaotic is another good one. Definitely very, very busy. And it all kind of comes down to the fact that physically speaking, the footprint of the station, the size of the station is really, really small, especially compared to the demand that it's facilitating. And the layout itself, the way the infrastructure is designed, you have a really tangled station, a really tangled site where you have, trolley cars that are multi-ton vehicles, you have buses that are huge, you have personal vehicles and pedestrians all kind of crisscrossing, conflicting at points. The station and the infrastructure out there is, in a sense, kind of tripping over itself. And in addition to those conflicts, you also have a lot of disconnects. And you can see when you're down there, you can feel that the station was never really built to handle the foot traffic, and the connections weren't really ever designed at the human scale. But for me, at least, one of the biggest deficiencies is that there's no room for more transit service. And to this day, it's still just the Blue Line and the local bus route 906, 907. It's not nearly enough. So keep in mind, there's still 70,000 people choosing a personal vehicle to cross the border despite the long wait times, unpredictable, miles-long queues that happen and cause a lot of air quality issues. For them, the Blue Line and the local bus route isn't really an option. So while SANDAG, obviously, we wear a lot of hats and we have a lot of responsibilities, one of them being, long-range regional planning, we do have an existing system that needs to be improved. And so over the last couple of years, SANDAG, MTS, City of San Diego, and Caltrans worked together to start to brainstorm, start to plan for improvements to the existing San Ysidro Transit Center, effectively improving what we have out there today. And through lots of brainstorming, lots of stakeholder meetings and briefings, discussions, gathering community input, talking to station users, we developed some scenarios for how to get more life, more function out of this really critical station. And what we came up with were some station redesign concepts that all provide better, human scale connectivity, more physical capacity and operational efficiencies for transit, all while trying to accommodate and be sensitive to the needs of the federal government and CBP operations that are happening just south of the station and even kind of through the station. But what we came up with was a concept A, a concept B, and a concept C, and I don't have too much time to get into detail, but effectively, they all achieve the things that you see bulleted on screen, just in slightly different ways. Concept A says you can achieve these things if you're willing to move where the trolley platforms are by a couple hundred feet. This scenario moves it to the east. Concept B does a similar thing, moves the trolley platforms to the east, but this time elevates the trolley station. But you can see, and we can circle back to this maybe later to dive into the detail, but you can see what we're trying to do is free up space to provide more capacity for transit, but also more pedestrian connectivity. And generally speaking, what we found is that there are ways to make an impact at the station, even just with shifting where the trolley may be, whether that's moving it to the east a couple hundred feet or elevating the trolley platforms effectively over the existing station. What you really do is unlock much needed space to transform the site from a connectivity and a user experience perspective. And while those things get advanced in the near term, there's also a need for a long-term vision, which we'll get into in a bit. But the planning study, which is now wrapped up, uncovered a lot of important lessons learned, which is long-term visions are great, but there's an existing station that has needed these improvements for the last 20 years or more. So we need to kind of focus on things that we can do more in the near term, as well as build towards a long-term vision. But these things can happen in parallel. So while we learned a lot of great things through that planning study, and we're going to be moving kind of in parallel, separate but parallel tracks to move that along, there's also a long-term planning effort that's coming together. And really what this is about is tapping into the long-term potential of the station, not just from a transportation perspective, but also potential development in and around what is a major hub today and what can be a huge opportunity for a flagship station and a really incredible public space in the future. And that's where the San Ysidro Mobility Hub work really comes in. Looking towards that long-term future, we know that there's a possibility for even more transit connections to connect to the borders, some of which are in or will soon be in early planning stages. And in fact, the next presentation report item that you have on your agenda will touch on some of the rapid bus planning that fits into this long-term vision. But in addition to the functional aspects like the rail and bus connections, the future hub is really going to need a sophisticated design scheme that ensures that functionality, but also is reflective of the binational community. The station that we have today really leaves like no impression of a sense of space. And we know if we're going to invest in something in the long term, it really has to be reflective of the creativity and all the cultural inspiration that we have, and that is San Diego, Tijuana, that's kind of evident through the World Design Capital spotlight. But in addition to that, a design scheme, it's also going to need a development strategy that includes creative ways to kind of integrate and capitalize on development that can come about through these bigger, more long-term investments in this flagship kind of station. And while we get ready to start that long-term planning, sorry, the clicker I think went to sleep. While we get ready to start that long-term planning and community visioning process starting next year, both the near term and the long term, like I said, are going to be moving on separate but parallel tracks, complementing each other, kind of this feedback loop. For example, we don't want to, plan out a station for the next 10, 15 years and then have a longer term vision be incongruent or be precluded by what we do in the near term. So I think Russian nesting doll when it comes to the near term and the long term. But one important aspect that I've been trying to hint at is the need for a comprehensive strategy around all these future investments, one that includes not just transportation, but captures the full benefits of a better station by complementing it with land use improvements. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Lizzie to talk about another study that's helping us better understand that side of the equation.
Thanks, Zach.
The Blue Line Transit-Oriented Development Study, or Blue Line TOD study, is building off these near-term infrastructure investments while providing a case study for TOD opportunities along the Blue Line trolley. The study will also inform the long-term vision of the San Ysidro Mobility Hub, helping shape land use considerations, working alongside stakeholders and cities. So not wanting to plan transportation projects in a silo, the goal of the study is to plan holistically to maximize benefits of transportation investments through complementary land use strategies. The Blue Line TOD study identifies opportunities for encouraging and creating TOD at and near 2 Blue Line trolley stations in South County, the San Ysidro station in the city of San Diego and the Palomar Transit Center in the city of Chula Vista. You'll see examples for both stations throughout the presentation, but the same analysis was completed for each station. The study assesses land use, transportation, and market conditions to inform strategies for TOD implementation and that highlight opportunities for potential development, community integration, and mobility improvements. The study will advance regional planning goals and support ongoing parallel efforts on the corridor as well. Throughout the study, we've worked closely with stakeholders at the City of San Diego, City of Chula Vista, and MTS. We're making recommendations to the cities and MTS for these proposed improvements to the public realm, land use updates, and policy considerations. Today, I'll be providing an overview going over the process and key takeaways of the study as we're set to wrap up the final report next month. So to focus a little bit on the Palomar Transit Center, so Palomar has high ridership numbers, vacant lots, and surface parking surrounded by commercial and residential land uses. SANDAG is currently planning for a number of investments in this area, including a grade separation project and a rapid bus connecting Chula Vista to San Diego State University. So understanding these upcoming investments for Palomar Transit Center, as well as those for San Ysidro, one of our key takeaways include making recommendations to maximize benefits by leveraging public investment for land use potential and capital improvement projects through informed TOD strategies. So early on in the study, for example, we looked at how the land is utilized compared to current zoning regulations. So what you see on a scale from dark green to red is that green areas have more capacity to support a greater density than current conditions. We set out to analyze why and make those corresponding recommendations. With initial analysis complete, we then set out to measure opportunity for TOD potential to help us inform our overall report and implementation strategies. While SANDAG doesn't have land use authority, we're working closely with our stakeholders to provide these recommendations and resources. So this task included utilizing a TOD index with scores for subcategories and categories for transit connectivity, walkability, bikeability, development feasibility, and community health and well-being. This provides a score at the parcel level to analyze TOD potential and can be replicated throughout the region. The next steps of the study included outlining specific recommendations for implementation strategies. Here, this slide demonstrates opportunities in San Ysidro to leverage publicly owned land to help meet our regional housing goals while also uplifting other placemaking strategies for land use development. What we learned in this task and through our market analysis is that while we prepare or wait for the market to catch up, public agencies can invest in affordable housing, station and public realm improvements at large. So some of these next steps, I would like to emphasize the study helps make recommendations in line with our public outreach, engagement with the business communities of these areas, and in coordination with the cities and stakeholders. The rendering you see is a concept highlighting the highest and best use of the area, but essentially is prototypical, and the market analysis can be scaled and applied throughout the study area and sub-regional level. So some of these next steps include collaborating with the stakeholders like city staff and affordable housing developers, leveraging the study for the San Ysidro Mobility Hub planning work, and further evaluating options for housing as an opportunity for transportation project mitigation, exploring innovative project delivery models and financing mechanisms at the federal, state, and local level. So that was a quick overview of the Blue Line Transit-Oriented Development Study, how it relates to some of the work at the San Ysidro Transit Center and future San Ysidro Mobility Hub. So zooming out again to talk a little bit about these three separate but intertwined efforts. The San Ysidro Transit Center improvements, these more near-term improvements, that planning study concluded just this last fall, and that includes those near-term station redesign efforts. Preliminary engineering will begin in 2025, and then in 2026, we'll see the environmental phase begin. For the Blue Line TOD study, this really connects to the broader San Ysidro Mobility Hub work. So this study again, is wrapping up just this month. We'll be able to publish that online probably in the new year. Then we'll kick off San Ysidro Mobility Hub, that long-term vision in 2025. We'll have draft land use development concepts in 2026, and then looking in 2027 for the planning study to conclude for the San Ysidro Mobility Hub. And then, of course, we'll be working with lots of stakeholders and doing community engagement throughout this time. And with that, we welcome any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much on the very insightful presentation. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
There are no public comments.
Any committee member comments or questions? None? That's a little surprising. I would like to say thank you so much for the presentation. I think I've seen at least parts of it at MTS as well. To what degree are you as staff working with MTS staff to develop this vision in the future, going forward?
Yeah, really closely. I mean, they're a direct agency partner. In fact, they funded the near-term planning work. So all those kind of near-term improvements, were removing the trolley, adding a bus-only lane, that kind of thing. They funded that initial planning work, and they were there with us, step by step. And in the long term, they're also going to be, really a key stakeholder. They're a property owner, obviously. They operate the transit services, so their insight is really kind of critical.
And you mentioned some figures at the beginning of the presentation. How many individuals utilize the transit system on a daily basis there?
So we're looking at, 13 to 14,000 people using transit just at San Ysidro Transit Center alone. The vast majority, the lion's share, is obviously on the blue line, but there's still quite a bit of demand for the 906, 907 kind of circulator route that gets people up and down from the Iris station and then back down through the community.
Yeah. And you mentioned that it's the backbone of MTS funding. Do you happen to know what percentage?
No, in terms of like fare box recovery, I don't have that number offhand.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We all see it by the numbers. If you go there, it is absolutely chaotic. I think that is a proper word. And I think as rising housing costs continue, there are more and more and more people not only moving to San Ysidro, but over to Tijuana, that are U.S. citizens that simply have a need for more affordable housing. And so we can only expect to have the need for us to have a better public transportation line in the coming years. And thank you so much for looking forward. Very much appreciated. Yes, one more comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just have a comment and suggestion. I would just encourage staff to also keep in mind and look at the work that SANDAG did about 10 years ago for the Intermodal Transportation Center, and a lot of work was put into that. So I think there might be still things that are relevant from that you may want to bring forward with this new study. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Samak.
Quick question and perhaps suggestion. I was wondering if any communication and or outreach has been made to our colleagues across the border in Tijuana and or our colleagues in the International Waters and Boundary Commissions.
Not to the latter, IBWC, but yeah, SANDAG has, over 20 years of binational collaboration behind us, and we continue to move along, coordinating with the partners in Mexico every year. And through this particular study, the near-term planning improvements, we reached out, obviously, to all the key players, the forums that include both representation from both sides of the border, from government to academia to private sector, et cetera. Smart Border Coalition is a good example, but yeah, definitely a lot of binational collaboration happening.
Glad to hear that. I think it's a great approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any additional comments or questions? No. Thank you so much again for the presentation. This is an informational item only. Moving on to item number 6. We will now hear from SANDAG's Deputy Director of Regional Planning, Jennifer Williamson, and Senior Regional Planner, Mimi Morisaki, for an update on the initial planning for 6 new rapid routes.
Good morning, everyone, again. I'm super excited to give you guys an update on the rapid project development that we have underway today. As part of SANDAG's Regional Transportation Improvement Plan, the RTIP, we did an amendment last October, or actually October before last, to add several million dollars to our budgets to support the development of several new projects, and 6 rapid routes were included in that budget effort. So as part of those, let me move forward here. Oh, no. So as I was saying, in October, we went ahead and adopted, we added $26.6 million to our budget to design 6 new rapid routes. And the reason we did this is largely because it's important to get projects ready. We call them bench ready. And what that means is that the further along we can get projects, the more eligible they will be for grants from the federal administration and also from different California sources. So that is our goal here, is to get these projects ready for development and implementation. So just an introduction to our Next Gen Rapid. We call these our next generation of rapid projects. As you may know, SANDAG does implement several rapid projects today. These projects, we want to build on everything that we've learned about the rapid system and improve that, basically. So what we're going to be looking at here with these 6 additional routes is reducing the bus stops. Every time the bus stops, it adds time to the overall route. So if we can really pinpoint where those stops are most needed, then we can speed that route along. We also want to look at where priority lanes might be needed, but then also where they aren't needed. Rapid routes don't always have to be in their own dedicated lane. It's important to really establish, is there certain times a day that a priority treatment could be most beneficial, and other times a day that it could just operate in the main lanes like regular vehicles. So we're looking at that. Transit signal priority. We've been doing this for a long time, and this is essentially where the bus can keep a green longer so it can travel through an intersection, or it can reduce the time of a red so that it can move forward through the intersection as well. There's been a lot of advances in transit signal priority, and we're looking at a lot of things like smart signals where we can do a progression through a corridor instead of just looking at going signal to signal. So that's something that we're doing. All door boarding, that's something that we have on the trolley today. So when you go out and want to get on the trolley, you just walk right on. With buses, we spend a lot of time with people going up and down stairs and stopping at the driver to either pay with their fare media or to have some kind of conversation. So we'd like to get rid of that process entirely and allow for all door boarding and alighting, leaving the bus, if you will. And that really, really speeds up operations. So we're going to be looking at that. And then finally, more modern conveniences, Wi-Fi, more safety features at our stations. And then finally, we're looking at bumping up the headways, the frequency, how often these services come. So today we have rapids that operate at 10 minutes and then rapids that operate at 15 minutes. We'd like to hit that sweet spot and have all those services operate at 10 minutes so that there can be good connectivity throughout the system. So what does transit priority mean? There's been a lot of discussion about transit priority only meaning dedicated bus lanes. And by no means are we just looking at dedicated bus lanes. There's a time and a place for those. And then there's also a time and a place for other priority treatments. And some of these things can be a queue jump where you might get up to, the bus might have its own dedicated space at a light, and we get a little signal similar to the trolley that allows the bus to jump ahead and through that intersection before all the other traffic catches up to it. That's very much a localized spot treatment. That's not a full, dedicated bus lane. We're looking at shared bus bike lanes. We've done that successfully throughout the region, and that's been really good to maximize the use of the street. And then also the managed lanes that you see on I-15, those are shared by both HOV, fast track users, and then also the bus service. So again, priority treatments, there's quite an array of what a priority treatment could look like. So project overview. I'm going to turn this over to Mimi now to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to be looking at and studying for these 6 routes.
Thank you, Jennifer. So these 6 routes we keep talking about, there's a map here on the side, and we'll go through each one in our presentation in a few slides as well. So just having that there as a placeholder for you. But as Jennifer mentioned, this is more of a comprehensive start to this analysis for these 6 new routes that we'll be studying. And that's made up of 3 main components: design and engineering, which will go through goals and objectives all the way up to a 15% design level, and just scratching the surface on the environmental clearance. So identifying the type of environmental clearance we'll need after getting through our alternatives analysis. I also want to mention that Rapid 625 is one of these 6 routes, and that was something that we had worked on and studied last year. So we're not starting from scratch on that route. We're continuing this analysis process and linking it in with these other 5 routes to get to that 15% design level. And Jennifer also mentioned the technology component. That's another separate effort that another SANDAG team will be working on in conjunction with all of these route teams to collaborate with the various jurisdictions, agencies, MTS, and CTD, and stakeholders to ensure that we have the appropriate technology thought of and planned for when these routes eventually get implemented. Another key component is public outreach. So coordinating with the general public and CBOs to get their input and feedback on where these stops should be. And of course, stakeholder meetings. So again, the affected agencies and collaborating with each of them on how these routes will move throughout their cities or jurisdictions. And of course, general outreach meetings as well. And all of these add up to making us eligible to apply for grants. That's the main reason we're going through this whole process.
Just chime in real quickly. So I think as you're looking at this presentation today, we want you to start thinking about how we are engaging with your cities, because a lot of these services, these 6 routes, are going to be coming through your cities. And those priority treatments that we talked about, we want to work really closely with you so that we understand what the needs of your city are, what the willingness is to support different types of measures, and really have a collaborative kind of a planning effort. So as you're going through these, we just want you to start thinking about who you might want to have serve on our teams, who, if you want to be on our evaluation committee. So Mimi's going to talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to put that seed in your head right now that we're going to be asking a lot of you to help us develop these routes in a way that you guys are going to want to support, feel comfortable, write us a letter of support for our grant efforts moving forward. So yeah, Mimi, I just wanted to chime in with that.
So this is an overall timeline for all of the rapid routes. Right now, we're in this 2025 to 2026 timeframe with this alternatives analysis, 15% design and engineering. That's what we have funding for these 6 routes. Rapid 625 has funding to go a little bit further, but again, they have not yet completed that 15% design level. So once that's completed in the next couple of years, that team will move on to get to that 30% design level in 2027, 2028. And then none of these 6 routes have funding yet to get implemented and operate, but we anticipate that in that 2029 earliest timeframe. So now we'll go through each of these 6 routes in a little bit more detail, but as Jennifer mentioned, we wanted to, I want to also mention that while these are lines on a map right now, all of it is still subject to change because we will be having meetings with you all, with stakeholders, community members, to go through the alternatives alignments as well. So this is just a rough overview of our start and end for discussion purposes. So Rapid 277, it's a little light here on the screen, but it starts in Ramona and will end at Sabre Springs. It's meant to serve the East County residents, provide that east-west connection for the rural community to connect with the main transit network. And we're also aware that Caltrans and SANDAG have worked on improving that corridor with new technology recently. So we'll be working closely with Caltrans and, of course, again, the jurisdictions, County of San Diego as well, on the facilities that we could be using for this route. Rapid 880 is a route that will start in the city of El Cajon, travel north and west through Santee, use SR 52 to go through the city of San Diego, and ultimately terminate at UCSD. We also are looking at having a stop or two in Kearney Mesa to pick up some riders there, and again, terminate in UCSD area. This is also part of the SR 52 improvements project that Caltrans is working on. So the managed lanes that Jennifer mentioned earlier, that's something we have planned as part of our regional plan process as well. So we're syncing all of these measures to make transit more efficient for this corridor.
So next we have Rapid 43 that we're going to be evaluating, and this service connects Temecula all the way down to San Marcos. And really, if you think about this, this is very similar to our commuter express routes that we have on I-15 today. And the intent there is, or the ridership that it's developing would be to connect a lot of those North County communities beyond even just Fallbrook up to Temecula to the San Marcos, Cal State San Marcos University. So it's got about 20 plus miles of freeway operation, and then it will utilize surface streets, arterial streets in San Marcos to get to Cal State San Marcos. The next route is kind of a precursor to the Blue Line. So the Blue Line trolley is very impacted, has very high ridership today, and a lot of people have to, stop at all of the routes along the trolley line. So what we're looking at this route is to expedite the trolley. So look at reducing the number of stops so that we're not stopping at all the same stops that the trolley does today, to provide a much faster service into downtown San Diego. We see this as a primary commuter corridor, but it also has a lot of midday ridership connecting to different points. So we'll be evaluating this as part of our Blue Line trolley improvements as well. The next route is our precursor to the Purple Line. So the Purple Line, I think we gave you a presentation on this as a commuter rail service that we're looking at, or a high-speed rail service that we'll be evaluating and entering into alternatives analysis on. But we know that because it's a long route, the Purple Line is going to take some time to develop. So this route would connect, again, San Ysidro. San Ysidro is a huge generator of a lot of trips in this region, and it would go up through the central part of the corridor. So if you think about South County today, a lot of that regional transit is really on the I-5 corridor with the Blue Line. And this, we would utilize 805 to really penetrate some of those communities like Southeast San Diego, City Heights, Euclid, connect those to our major job centers in Kearney Mesa and University Town Center. So this is a precursor to the Purple Line, and it's about 31 miles of operation daily. The next route is Rapid 625, and this is the one that Mimi told you about previously that we've done the most analysis on, and it connects Chula Vista, the Palomar Station. So you're kind of seeing the theme here. You heard about the Blue Line Todd, the Palomar stations. It would connect the Blue Line Todd all the way up to SDSU. And this operates almost exclusively on arterial lanes. This also has some of the highest ridership predicted out of the regional plan in the upcoming regional plan. So this route, there's a real need to connect all of these communities along this line to these major centers. So it would operate through Chula Vista, National City, and the city of San Diego. So it's going to be quite an extensive project that we're looking at here on this route.
So the immediate next steps we have planned is starting to look at what has been done. So again, the next gen study that was completed last year, and looking at other existing conditions for each of these routes. We've also drafted the goals, objectives, and performance measures as a standard for all of these routes to consider and use. And we'll be finalizing those with the support of our stakeholders and community members next spring. And we also anticipate having our consultant teams on board next spring as well. And this consultant team, there will be one team per route. It's a lot of work to do for each of these 6 routes. So we're in the procurement process right now, the solicitation phase. The RFQs are out on the streets for bidding, and that will close in January, again, with the idea and hope of having them on board by next spring. And with that, that is all we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Very much appreciate the insightful conversation. Do we have any comments from the members of the public?
Yes, we have one public comment. Catherine Rhodes, you are unmuted.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you so much for this presentation. I just wanted to mention the reason why I don't take transit. And the main reason is because there's no public bathrooms along the way, especially at the transit stations. I know sometimes, you have bathrooms that only bus rider or transit operators are allowed to use, but members of the public are basically stranded trying to go to, a McDonald's or something that's open. So I think that you're not going to be able to get a lot of people to ride on these things unless you actually have restrooms for them. It's kind of unfair to, for people who wake up in the morning trying to go to work, and then there's no restrooms for them to go until they actually get to work. So I think, that's a big thing. And then the other thing is that, you guys don't really have money to do this. And the reason for that is, one of the big main reasons for that is because the airport authority, we have a grandfathered airport. It's in the Federal Register, it's in the FAA documents. But people in the Los Angeles Airport District Officer and the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority tried to say that you can't use this revenue off-site. Then I believe when Hassan was there, he made a deal to get, I think, $350 million for the airport for a project. But they're only using SANDAG money instead of airport revenue money, because SANDAG's trying to say there's not a project, there's not a sequel level project, when there was that airport connectivity project that you spent about $40 million with. So my recommendation to you guys is to actually analyze the FAA documents that I gave you before that show you that you can use airport revenue off-site. You can pay for the whole entire airport connectivity project and then use all that revenue that you have for these projects that you don't have any funding for. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any committee member comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Galloway?
Galloway.
Yes. Galloway.
Thank you. Just quick question so I understand. I wasn't quite clear on Rapid 640. Is the idea with that is that this would be a bus service on Interstate 5 from San Isidro to downtown, but the idea of this is in the future there would be improvements to the Blue Line so that there would be a LRT Express in lieu of this or replacement of this in the future?
So it is a precursor to the improvements on the Blue Line. I'm not sure there will be an express Blue Line trolley. We're looking at the feasibility of that as part of this study. So there's 2 pieces of that. Looking at, could we do an express Blue Line trolley? Is it feasible? And then the second piece of that is the development of this rapid project. Because even if we determine that there are improvements that could be made to the Blue Line trolley, it'll take some time for those to be implemented because we have to consider freight operations as well as the Blue Line. And we'd like to start to build ridership and faster service in that corridor.
And just maybe one follow-up question. Is this going to be done with any improvements to the I-5 or would the transit vehicles still be operating in mixed flow that exists today?
We're working with Caltrans to determine where we can get some level of priority on the freeway. That could be buses on shoulders on I-5, or that could be other things. But we are working, Caltrans is on our team, and we're looking at prioritizing the bus activities on I-5.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Alberto. And
Ed Alberto, City of San Marcos, sorry. Just a quick question in the beginning. You said that the rapid routes have to be in their own dedicated lanes. Just for clarification.
No, I
Okay.
said they do not
Okay,
have to
thank
be
you.
in their own dedicated lanes.
That answers my question
Yeah.
then.
Yeah.
yes.
Good morning, Sean Anak, Airport Authority. A quick question on that bus route following up with Tate. Is that the night owl service or is that different?
It would be different. So the night owl service is really meant to be that bridge between when the Blue Line stops operating and freight operates in that corridor and this is meant to be an all-day rapid service to get people faster during the regular day.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Schmidt.
Nathan Schmidt, City of Carlsbad. Happy to see Rapid Route 483. It's very interesting. We're highly supportive of it. There's a lot of people going between Riverside County and North County and San Diego, so it makes a lot of sense, especially along the 15. It gives you a nice pinch point to connect to because that's really the only way to get between the two areas. So it makes a lot of sense. In Carlsbad, we're already trying to figure out ways to leverage this system and we're excited to work with staff on developing this idea. Ideally, we'd like to see, potentially a mobility hub, maybe at the terminus at CSU San Marcos, somewhere along there, along Palomar Airport Road, that we could then connect to. And we'd like to see this on the map is, maybe a flexible fleets connection that feeds into the city of Carlsbad. It could easily connect to our 40,000 plus employees along Palomar Airport Road, connect to Poinsettia Station, and also the village in Carlsbad. I think there would be a lot of great synergies between this system and connecting into Carlsbad. So looking forward to see the development of this Rapid Route 483 in particular.
Thank you so much. Any additional comments or questions? No? Well, this is an informational item only. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. And lastly, we will be meeting for the next mobility working group on Thursday, January 9th at 9:30 a.m. here. Thank you so much. We are adjourning at 11:06. Thank you.